Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Eric Hernandez here along with...
Doug.
It still feels weird doing it at the end and now at the beginning again. Whatever.
Yeah.
And you are listening to episode number, I have to look over real quick, 620. Yeah, baby, we're getting up there. Not all these can be fun, exciting, and, laugh riot. We have some sad things to talk about in this episode. Most importantly, the passing of two very important individuals in the world of professional wrestling. First and foremost, Terry Funk, long career hardcore legend. As Doug had recalled at one point during the episode, he just wanted to wrestle with his friends. And he did so for a very, very long time. And he had recently passed away August 24th of 2020... August 23rd, 2023. And then the other individual who passed away today, which was fucking news to me as we were recording, Bray Wyatt, part of the Rotunda family. And just was not expecting some of the information we got tonight. At least I wasn't. But we did our best to try to report on it, talk about what they did, what they contributed, how their careers impacted the world of professional wrestling, and just the craziness that they did to entertain the fans. So we hope you enjoy this episode. We are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can find us under the podcast section. You can also find us over on YouTube, youtube.com/Rabblecast. Check us out at our Facebook fan page. Send us a tweet at Rabblecast, because we're still calling that. And email us, rabblecast@gmail.com. Anything else, Doug?
No.
We're going to give you a bunch of different resources for Terry Funk as far as what to watch, what to listen to, what to read if you want, for his background. And for Bray Wyatt, who's had a more recent career, there's a bunch of stuff you can find online, especially from the Wyatt family, the Fiend, and everything else he's done in recent years. So we implore anybody who's a fan of either one of those gentlemen, go check it out, watch some matches, appreciate what they did, and rest in peace to both individuals and our condolences to both families. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm tired.
All right.
It's been a very interesting week. My family, for the most part, has gone to Central America to visit family
Okay.
down there. And because of that, it's not that big of a deal. Like, they help out as far as watching the kids or whatever the case is. But since my other brother went down as well, I am now house sitting his place for a few days until he comes back this weekend. So just like, I've been bouncing back and forth, picking stuff up, doing things. And I'm just like, I can't wait for this week to be over at this point.
So what house are you at now?
Right now, I'm back at our place. I was at his place a few towns over. Funny enough, earlier in the week, I'm like, you know what? We've been doing a pretty good job putting out the show on a regular basis. Maybe a week off during the summer is not so bad. And what happens? Big news in the wrestling world happens. I'm like, okay, fuck.
A lot of big news in the wrestling world. Yeah.
It's like whenever I consider taking a day off, it's always been this way with the show. Whenever a day off is in the works, something happens. Like, I remember way back when we were doing 4th of July at our mutual friend Michael's out in Bloomfield. At the time, he had discovered that the door all the way up to the roof of his building was unlocked at the time, or at least could be unlocked very easily. And we went upstairs and we had a 360-degree fireworks display. Like, oh, this is really cool. And then while we're out there, suddenly news comes in on our phones that Rob Van Dam and Sabu had gotten pulled over after leaving a house show. And at that point, they're like, oh, Rob Van Dam's going to be losing the title because he got pulled over and he had weed. I was like, oh, fuck. And of course, that was the week we decided to take off. We're just like, God damn it, that we're like on the back end trying to fill in the information as far as news and everything else. Everybody else had already been covering. But that was also trying to keep up as far as like putting out news as it happened. At this point, it just got to the point where like, oh, you know what? We don't have to speak about it the day of or week of. We'll talk about it when we talk about it. It doesn't have to be a certain time, but it was just one of those things where like, yeah, whenever you think you can take a little bit of time, you're like, fuck. So, I don't know. Anything in particular you want to tackle first?
I don't even know. I mean, there were two major stories, so I guess we'll start by talking about Terry Funk.
Okay. Well, I'm not entirely sure what the other story is besides Terry.
You don't know the other thing that happened today?
I've been running back and forth. I haven't been able to check my my updates.
Wow, this is breaking out a couple hours ago. Bray Wyatt died.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
No, okay. Wow. News
Yeah,
to me.
literally, I heard about it at like 6:30, I think, or so.
Okay. At 6:30, I was passing out on my brother's couch from exhaustion. So,
Well, there it is. Yeah.
okay. So, the one I do know about, and because I was actually looking it up today, information. Funny enough, last night when I heard the first rumblings of it, I held off posting anything because I'm like, all right, I've fallen for death hoaxes here and there where like somebody says somebody passed away and they're like a day later, like, I'm alive and well. Here's a newspaper with today's date, whatever the case is. I was like, all right, let's hold off and see what happens. And a few hours went by. And then finally, I saw an update from Mick Foley. I'm like, ah, fuck. Now I know it's real. So
Yep.
at that point, I was like, okay, read through, see what's going on, see what's happening. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And if you don't mind, I'll read off some of the information that's on his Wikipedia.
Go for it.
So, for anybody who doesn't know, Terry Funk, otherwise known as Terrence Funk, was an American professional wrestler, was known for the longevity of his career, which at one point in his career was kind of funny, which spanned more than 50 years and included multiple short-lived retirements. That was the funny part. And the influential hardcore style he pioneered in the latter part of his career, he is considered one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. Over the course of his career, Funk has wrestled for numerous major promotions, among them All Japan Pro Wrestling, Extreme Championship Wrestling, the International Wrestling Association of Japan, Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling, the United States Wrestling Association, World Championship Wrestling, the World Wrestling Federation, and multiple National Wrestling Alliance territories, including Big Time Wrestling, Championship Wrestling from Florida, Georgia Championship Wrestling, and Stampede Wrestling. He was the promoter of the Amarillo-based Western States Sports promotion.
That was a promotion started by his father, Dory Funk Sr., back right in the 50s, I believe.
Was it that long ago? Wow.
Yeah, it was one of the old territories. Yes, sir.
Fuck, man. I'll just finish up with this last part here. Championships held by Funk include ECW World Heavyweight Championship, NWA World Heavyweight Championship, USWA United World Heavyweight Championship, WWF Tag Team Championship, and ECW World Television Championship. He headlined ECW's premier annual pay-per-view event, November to Remember, 3 times. Funk has been inducted into multiple Hall of Fames, including WWE, WCW, NWA, and Hardcore. If you're a fan of professional wrestling, which obviously Doug and I are, and you're not familiar with the legend, the name of Terry Funk, just please do me a favor. Look up any Terry Funk wrestling match or video that you can find out there, whether it's here in the States or overseas in Japan. You're in for a treat either way. I mean, the guy, I didn't realize he was 50 years as far as how long his career was. That's That's insane.
He was still working matches. I think the last match he worked was 2017. So
I believe it.
yeah, Terry Funk was, if I remember correctly, he was born June of 1944, which
Correct.
makes him 14 months older than Vince McMahon. I don't know why I remember that, because Vince McMahon was born August of 45.
Okay.
Probably because if I think of Terry Funk, I think of D-Day, and D-Day was June of 44. And if I think of Vince, I think of the end of World War II, and that was August 45.
Oh, weird.
At least the Pacific Theater of Operations. But anyway, getting back to the point, so if you think about that, that's 55, 65, 75, 85, 95, 2005. So 2015, he turned 70. So he was having his last match in 2017. So yeah, he would have been 72 when it was some type of a wacky six-man match involving the Midnight Express, him, I want to say Jerry Lawler's kid, Brian Lawler, whatever you want to call him, and I can't remember who the other guy was, maybe Doug Gilbert. And I'm sure he wasn't out there, bumping and doing, detailed chain wrestling or anything like that. But he was still going for it. I mean, I feel like we could talk for 4 hours about the life and times of Terry Funk, and it's not enough to do it justice, truth be told.
Let me add on to that we say Terry Funk, but like any good performer in the world of professional wrestling, they went under different names. So if you can't find something that's under, to your liking under the name of Terry Funk, you could also look for, let's see, what was it? I don't think I've ever seen him wrestle as Black Baron. I'm going to assume that was an early gimmick. Are you familiar with that?
I've never even heard of that.
Black Baron, Chainsaw Charlie was in the WWF at the time.
That was one of the worst kept secrets in wrestling.
He's wearing, pantyhose over his over his head.
Pantyhose, the red long sleeve, the jeans, and like a pair of suspenders.
It's ridiculous. Then he has Dr. Knows It All, Terry Funk, obviously, and then the Texan. So any of those, you'll probably find them in the history books as well. It amuses me that he held so many world titles, but in the WWE, he could only get to the tag team championship.
Mm-hmm.
Like all these other organizations, he was busting his ass. He was doing what he did out there, helped shape the world of professional wrestling. Now, granted, you don't know that you're doing it as you're doing it, but he had been around for so long that like you would think that WWE at one point would say, try to give him kind of a shot or try to push him into a certain spotlight. But they're like, no, you're a supporting player. You're going to help build the other guys up and everything else. And I get it. It's a product and you have to, promote the other guys, especially guys who are going to be there, quote unquote, long term or up and coming. But it always seems kind of weird to me that other promotions will give these guys a shot and they'll make it big as far as the fans are concerned. They might not make it big in mainstream, but from there, they're just do their thing and go out there and work the crowd, rile them up, pay-per-views, whatever the case is, shows in different towns. I can't specifically recall if we were ever, or at least I was ever on a card with Terry.
Mm-hmm.
But the one place that I can specifically call out, and I wish I had the tape, I might have to reach out to our friend Uncle James, who runs the wrestling convention in Jersey, was the wrestling ring roast of Terry Funk.
Okay.
And I had mentioned it way back in the day where normally you see a roast, especially for comedians, actors, or other public figures, and they're funny events, things, you can enjoy, laugh about, whatever the case is. But for wrestling, oftentimes the roast ended up taking a dark and somber turn because at the end of an acting career or comedic career, you've got money, you've got friends, maybe you have your health. At the end of some of these wrestling roasts, a lot of your friends have passed away, whether it be due to injury, drug-related incidences, accidents, whatever the case is. Health, you're lucky if you still have good working knees or back. And unfortunately, some of the jokes can take a personal turn, and sometimes people can get very upset. In fact, that night, I'll won't go much more into it, but there was a dispute between New Jack and I think it was Missy Hyatt. And it was a moment where it got really uncomfortable for the fans who were in attendance because it was open to certain people of the convention, and we were invited to check it out. And if it wasn't for Terry Funk and Mick Foley, nobody was going to be able to calm down New Jack. So you're just like, this is kind of a fucking weird night. But it was fun just to hear Terry tell some stories, Mick tell some stories, whoever else was on the dais. At that point, just enjoy the finer moments. It's definitely like I wish more people could have been there to seen it, because just having the video of it nowadays probably isn't going to do it justice. And I'm sure they probably cut a few things out here and there, but that was the closest I got to Terry. I got to say hi to him at the very least. It just sucks. Like, who knows, Not to put it down on it, you just never know when you're going to go, what's going to happen. I think it was like 2 years ago they had mentioned that he was in a nursing home, and
he's been living in a nursing home for a while. They sold the Double Cross Ranch. He sold the Double Cross Ranch some years ago, I believe. His age was getting so much, and I'm willing to speculate. Part of it may have had to do with the fact that one of the things that is interesting about Terry Funk as well. I mean, a lot of wrestlers are famous for basically just like going out there and fucking around a lot. Terry was married to the same woman since the mid '60s.
Yeah,
and his wife, when she passed away in March of 2019, I can't imagine what kind of a blow that was to him after being married to her for, God, at that point, 40 something years.
Yeah. That reminds me of when Stan Lee passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Stan Lee was married to his wife for, I can't remember how many years off the top of my head, but they'd been together for a very, very long time. And after she had passed, like it wasn't that long after that he went as well. So It's just unfortunate. The one thing for me, and we've heard the stories, especially with Mick Foley, because of that hardcore wrestling style, the damage, the punishment, the scars that are left on your body, not just physically, but also mentally. It's just hard to get through some of those things. Now, we've heard that Mick Foley's had some improvements here and there, thanks to the advancements of nootropics and different vitamins and supplements, different treatments. You can try to begin the healing process, I guess you can say, as far as your mind is concerned. Because Mick Foley would say he'd have moments where he'd leave the house to go to the store or something. Suddenly he's somewhere like lost in the neighborhood going, how the fuck did I get here?
Yeah.
I got that bad. But with Terry, I have to imagine, how old is Mick Foley at this point?
Oh boy, I think Foley was born in the mid 60s, so I think he's somewhere in his 60s himself right now.
Okay, so roughly, we'll say 15 years Terry had on him?
I think it was closer to 20, to be honest with you.
Okay. We'll split the difference in there, 15, 20. But to know, like, Terry had already been that far along in his career, and there's a point in time where nootropics or treatments, like, yeah, you can put him on them, but you're going to have diminishing returns as he gets older. So who knows if it would have really made much of a difference for him later in life.
Yeah.
But he fucking lived a long, crazy life as far as we can tell. All the wrestling stories, all the matches, all the cameos he would make on different shows. And I mean, hell, in his honor tonight in the background, I was trying to find something to watch. Netflix no longer has Quantum Leap. And I think it was the third season of Quantum Leap. There was an episode called Heart of a Champion.
Yes. Where
Dr. Sam Beckett, played by Scott Bakula, jumps into a wrestler's life, and he's tag team with a when he jumps into the episode, the way it starts off, he's suddenly in a wrestling match. When he knocks out the guy that he's wrestling against, not knowing what the hell is going on, come to find out that his brother his tag partner is a Russian wrestler, and he cuts a promo in the crowd saying how they're going to destroy everybody, boo USA, yay Russia, whatever the case is. When they get to the locker room, he speaks to his partner, and come to find out it's his brother, and they're not really Russian, they're English, they're just playing Russian characters in the territory. The one promoter comes out and goes, "Oh, you guys can't be doing that kicking stuff. You know, you're supposed to be out there wrestling. Why don't you stick to the script?" And the whole thing culminates in they're going to have a wrestling match. He and his tag partner going against the Shiloh brothers. One of them played by Terry Funk.
Yes.
And it's the whole thrust of the episode is that Sam can't let his brother, or the person he's assumed their life of, can't let the brother wrestle in the championship match because he's going to have a heart condition and he's going to die during that match. So he's trying everything in his power to try to get the match canceled, get the tag team out of the match, just trying to get him out of wrestling to, keep him alive, and then he could jump on to his next life. But Terry Funk playing the one Shiloh brother, just big and mean and strong, rips a locker off its hinges. Crazy stuff. And just to see him doing that was always fun. I was hoping I could watch that in the background, but right now I'm watching Roadhouse.
I was going to say, I know Roadhouse is on there right now. You better be watching Roadhouse.
He already popped up on screen once. Playing the character of Morgan. Right now, the girl in the booze room is getting railed from behind by the one bouncer. So, yeah.
What a movie.
Rest in peace, Terry Funk.
And let's also not forget, also a major character in the Sylvester Stallone or Robert Loggia arm wrestling vehicle, Over the Top.
Very much so. Yes. When I went through, I thought Terry Funk had more movie credits. Actually, I was kind of sad to see that he has a handful of movie credits, but he has more TV show credits than he does movies.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, it's interesting. He's friends with Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how they met, but I'm sure Stallone helped him get some work. And also, one of the stories I always heard is after, I think, the first retirement in 1983, when he did the famous Forever speech in All Japan, one of the reasons he wanted to get out of it was he wanted to get into the Screen Actors Guild so he can get himself some health insurance.
Ah, okay.
Which is coincidentally also one of the things I heard Roddy Piper did in his when he did that in the 80s when he stepped away from the biz for a while. But as we all know, I mean, Terry Funk, I mean, you want a textbook case of, I can't get wrestling out of me because it's a part of me. So, and he came back. It wasn't. I think it was when he came back in '89, which at 44 years of age, I think he came back in amazing shape, and he had arguably one of the best feuds of his career when he feuded with Ric Flair from the spring until the fall of 1989 in WCW, culminating in the cage match at Halloween Havoc '89, where him and Terry Funk and the Great Muta took on Ric Flair and Sting in one hell of a match.
That's nuts. Just saying those names makes me want to go look up that match in particular now.
And you want to know what the most insane part about that sentence is?
What's that?
Out of the 4 guys in that match, one of them retired this year, and the other one is still active.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Muta just had his final 2 matches back earlier this year in February and March, I think it was. He had one final match as the Great Muta and one final match as Keiichi Muto. And Sting pretty much said he was like, yeah, I think I'll start wrapping it up this year. But, I mean, the crazy fuck is still... I mean, it was just a couple of weeks ago, somebody was telling me on AEW, he climbed a ladder in the ring, jumped out of the ring, off the ladder, out of the ring, onto somebody. I can't remember who it was that him and Darby Allin are feuding with. But he kind of, like, miscalculated it, and he ended up, like, bouncing his knee off the dude's face, or bouncing his face off the dude's knee.
Yeah, I watched the clip. It was Sammy Guevara.
That's it. Thank you.
And as he leapt off that ladder to the outside, mind you, the ladder was set up on the inside of the ring. As he jumped off, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is going to be a great moment. I mean, it's going to hurt for him in the morning, but all of a sudden he was on the lower half of Sammy's body. And when, you're about to take a hit like that, you flinch a little bit, you brace yourself, and Sammy brought his knee up and Sting's face bounced right off. You're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, that was it. Okay, thank you.
It's just one of those moments you're like, what happened? What's going on? The doctors get called down. They check him out. And yeah, he had to get stitches or something or other on his mouth. But, they continued the match for however long it was. It wasn't much after that. But yeah, these guys, they just, if it's that much in you as far as the world of professional wrestling, they don't know when to stop. They don't know when to quit. I mean, some of these guys will take time off, like you said. They'll rest up so they're not getting beat up by the ring on a weekly or nightly basis. But again, all that damage, I go back to Jerry Lynn's idea of having a bump card. And you've got so many bumps on that card, and once you fill your bump card, that's it. There's nothing past that, man. And I remember Terry Funk having a retirement match against Bret Hart at one point.
Oh, yeah, back in 97.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, is this really the last one? And they did some like weird, crazy sunset flip finish off of a ladder. And I think it was that one, actually. I might be conflating that with another one. But either way, once again, there's Terry going out there, putting on a show with Bret. And I'm thinking to myself, this can't be the end of it. And sure enough, he comes back again and again and again. It also goes to what do these guys do after wrestling? It's not like they can get a regular job.
Well, and that's also the difficult part is, you hope you make enough money to at least, maintain some type of standard, but it's not always easy for a lot of guys. I tend to wonder if that was part of it as well. I never really knew too much about it. I do remember there's one very sad interview. Do you remember back in 2005 when 2 different ECW documentaries came out?
Yes.
We had for the sake of the folks listening, there was the ECW documentary that the WWE put out, and there was one that was done by Jeremy Borash, who was working for TNA at the time. And so, as you can imagine, all the ECW guys who were working for Vince at the time were on that documentary, and all the other people who were not working for Vince were on the other documentary.
Exactly. Yep.
So, yeah, on one documentary, you had Taz, you had Rhino, you had Rob Van Dam, you had all those guys, the Dudleys, I believe. And then on the other one, you had New Jack, you had Terry Funk, you had Shane Douglas, you had Kid Gash. I'm forgetting a lot of the other names. I haven't watched that. But at the end of the interview, when they talk about how they did 2 ECW reunion shows that same weekend, the Hardcore Homecoming and ECW One Night Stand, Terry Funk had offers to wrestle on both shows. And, even WWE, even Vince said, it's like, you can work both. It's okay, Terry, it's you. You can do whatever you want, Terry. But Terry basically had to make the choice. He was like, my body can't handle this at this point. I can't do both shows. And he didn't really put a number on it, but he effectively said, he was like, the WWE one would have paid me a lot more, but I wanted to go do the show with my friends, and that's why I'm not a rich man.
Yeah. Wow, fuck.
Yeah, it's he doesn't cry or anything, but he kind of gets this very solemn look on his face, and it's kind of heartrending a little bit, because here's a guy he gave and gave and gave to everybody. I mean, he went to ECW. I mean, there's the famous video the day of the first pay-per-view, Barely Legal, in April of 1997, where Paulie gives the speech to the whole locker room, and he says, "This is the dance. Everybody look at Terry Funk and say thank you. He got us here. He's the reason that we're doing this right now." And he did it because he showed up there and he was like, "Oh, I could do something with him, and I could do something with him, and I could do something with him." And I mean, he said, "I can go out and I can make all these people just like I made Mick Foley, and just like I made a lot of other guys over the years," because he would just give so much of himself in the ring. And he was smart enough to know how to put together a match with a guy where he could lose the match and make the guy look like $1 million, but not really lose anything on himself, which, I mean, people forget, like, he's a nut in the ring, and he was out of his fucking mind, especially in the latter years. But he also really, truly understood how wrestling worked. So.
Yeah. And that's something you don't really see nowadays. I mean, you've got guys like Sting who are still kicking around, but like you said, he's wrapping it up. But some of these guys, they just don't know how to pass on the torch, so to speak. Mm-hmm. To make another guy, make an up-and-coming guy. You'll see it from time to time. Somebody will take a liking to a younger star, take them under their wing, and, show them the ropes, whatever the case is, or they put on a good program together. But more often than not, and I could speak from my personal experience in the locker rooms that I've been in, a lot of the times you're there, some of the older guys that have been there longer didn't care. They were just worried about holding on to their spot. And when it gets to that point, it's like you're not doing the business any favors. You want to roll into a new town and see somebody and say, like you said with Terry Funk, oh, I can do something with that guy, or he's got a particular style, let's make this work, and build it up from there. I was fortunate in my debut match in our town here. I was wrestling against a former WWE guy.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter to him whether I won or lost. It didn't matter to him what happened in the match. I mean, he has his name still. When he rolls into the next town, he's still a former WWE guy, and he's going to have, a heel match or a face match, whatever the case is. He worked his ass off to make me look amazing. Not saying that I needed that much help, but I was a greenhorn, and definitely learning as I went along, even with the training that I had. But by the end of the night, he had the crowd booing his ass up and down and cheering me like, oh my God, he got cheated, he lost, blah, blah, blah. We did they refer to it now as the Eddie Guerrero finish, where when the ref's back is turned, he took a chain out of his boot, threw it at me.
Yeah.
I caught the chain on my hand, then he bumps like he took a hit. And when the ref turns around, I had the upper hand at that point in the match, but the ref turns around, sees me with a chain on my hand, him on the ground, puts two and two together and assumes that I knocked him out with the chain, so I get disqualified, and the crowd went fucking apeshit. I had to follow his lead. He was calling out moves in the ring and everything else. I did my best. I got to the back, and I said, thank you so much, because holy shit, I don't think I'm going to ever have a match that fun, that exciting, and I couldn't ask for a better debut. It was fucking amazing, but I don't know if that happens that much anymore, because some of the older guys really don't give back as often. I jumped to Hulk Hogan, who look, I'm gonna harp on him to the day he's gone, and maybe we'll
Hulk Hogan's a bum. Fuck him.
Yeah, he never knew how to properly pass on the torch, and he always was concerned about his name, his image, his career. Like, he had so many opportunities to build other guys up. And don't get me wrong, he did work with other guys and make them stars and make them names, give them the rub, so to speak. But there's something to be said about, like, Terry, who just wanted to wrestle with his friends. Yeah. Had fun, put on a great show, make the crowd happy. Doesn't matter who goes home with a larger purse at that point. Yeah, there's time for money and negotiations and business and everything else. In Terry's case, I don't know who was handling that for him. I wish he could have had all the money for all the shit that he did, but in the case of like guys like Hogan or everybody else who are just sitting there like, oh, I have to have the upper hand, or I have to have creative control and all this. Nobody gives a shit. It's all fucking make pretend. You're going out there, especially in death matches in Japan, C4 explosives, black scorpions, piranhas, thumbtacks, any kind of weapon you can fucking think of. It's all pretend. Like, these guys are going out there putting on battles to entertain the fans. And yeah, you can make money out of it. Like, was it Necro Butcher, who says, look, people are willing to fly me all over the world and pay me just so I can punish my body. That's one way to look at it. But the other way is, guy who gives 50 years of his life to a career, and I don't know. I see he was at a nursing home, but was Terry well off in his latter years?
That I don't know. I never really knew anything about that. He was always relatively tight-lipped about his finances. I like to think he was taken care of at least along the way. There's one good story I heard in terms of money. Did you ever hear the ICP story about them and him?
It rings a bell, so it sounds familiar.
All right, to refresh you and also for any of our listeners who haven't heard it before, there's an excerpt from Terry Funk's book. I think that came out, probably 15 years ago at this point, where he knew about how, to take it back a little bit further, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, ICP put out Triangle Mania 2. So basically, all they did is they just jacked a bunch of Japanese death matches,
Hold on. Could you go
and
back
they
a
added
second?
their.
You dropped out a bit. They released, what was that again?
They released two tapes,
Okay.
Stranglemania and Stranglemania 2.
Okay.
And all they are is they went out and they got a bunch of footage. The first one was from the IWA King of the Deathmatch tournament in 1995. And the second one was just a bunch of random death matches, as I recall. And they just added their own commentary track on it in their alter egos of Diamond Donovan Douglas and Handsome Harley Quistela. And they just say just all kinds of just ridiculously silly shit. Yeah, Terry Funk is 114-year-old drunk Terry Funk. Cactus Jack is Cactus Sack, son of Prickly Balls.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, the headhunters are the Swedenhouse and Ponderosa. It's they basically just kind of rip on everything and fuck around. After the first one, Cactus Jack or Mick Foley, he ran into him backstage at a WWF show when they were doing stuff with the Oddities, and he basically walked up to him and looked and said, "So you're not going to put out any more videos with me?" And then, right? And they're like, "No, sir, not at all." So then they're like, "Fuck it, we'll still do a second one." They only put Terry Funk in it a little bit, but they still did that. Then fast forward to 2008, they got to be ICP got to be friends with Sabu. And they were playing shows down in Texas, and Sabu called up Terry Funk and said, "Hey, can we come up and see you? I got some guys here, ICP, they want to meet you." And he's like, "All right, that's fine." So they drove from it was something crazy. They drove from Houston to Amarillo, which that's I think 700 or 800 miles or something insane like that.
Good Lord.
Yeah, so they went up there. They hung out with him for a while. They were very happy to meet him. They were very cordial. They had some of his chili and all that. And they said, "We got some money for you, because as our thank you and our apology for using you without your permission in those tapes."
Nice.
And Foley or Funk basically says, he's like, "Oh, you don't have to worry about it, nothing." He's like, "Well, we're just going to leave you this money right here, and we're just going to leave it in your kitchen and just go." So Terry Funk. So he just kind of put it in there, and they just kind of go on their way after saying goodbye. So Terry Funk in the book, he was like, maybe it'll be like $40-$50 at best, and it was like $4,000.
Okay.
So, yeah, not bad, pretty good,
Nice.
But
I'm sorry.
yeah, nice little thank you. We're sorry, and yeah, you are the fucking best. So
Please don't hit me with a kendo stick.
yeah. But no, I never knew too much about I'm assuming that they used the money from selling the Double Cross Ranch and his land to pay for the nursing home he was staying in. I don't know too much about it. Honestly, I've seen bits and pieces of it, but some of the stuff I saw with him at the end, because wrestlers routinely went to go visit him, Tommy Dreamer would go visit him because of everything he did for Tommy Dreamer. Foley would go visit him, of course. Lots of wrestlers, if they were in the area, they would go visit him and just check in on him and go talk to him, see how he was doing. And I've seen some of those videos and some of the photos of him towards, especially the last 3 years or so, and they're tough to watch. You think about this guy, Terry Funk, who always had the weird curly hair, and he always had the goatee. And he was, he was never the most jacked, ripped guy in wrestling, but he was always in good shape. He looked like he could beat your ass, and he could. But man, seeing some of that stuff of him at the end when he just looks so frail and he looks so old and his hair is completely white. It's tough to watch, to be honest with you, because I just didn't like being reminded how old the guy was. So,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, because that was a guy where I remember seeing him when I was a kid. When I first started watching wrestling, I remember seeing him in WCW, I guess it was still technically NWA at that point. And then I remember seeing him pop up here and there. I never really watched ECW, but I remember in 1997 seeing him just showing up at bunches of pay-per-views randomly and just doing weird matches with stuff. Or the famous, do you remember Shotgun Saturday Night?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was the entire famous segment where he did this whole promo thing with Steve Austin, where they were basically just got in each other's faces and were just shit talking. And Steve Austin requested all of that because it was please let me do something with Terry Funk. And then of course a year later, we had Chainsaw fucking Charlie, and you had Terry Funk running around with pantyhose over his head, And if there's anybody I don't think I'd trust with a chainsaw, I think it's Terry Funk, because it's Terry fucking Funk, and the guy's kind of a maniac.
I still have vivid memories of Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie being thrown into a dumpster and being wheeled off the stage by the New Age Outlaws.
Oh yeah, that was the night after WrestleMania 14. Yes.
It's like, what the hell's going on? Who thought this was a good idea? But
I'm sure it was Terry Funk's idea.
I guess it worked. For anybody else out there who wants to check out more information involving Terry, the documentary Beyond the Mat from 1999, it does involve Mick Foley more heavily, especially his match against The Rock and the amount of punishment he took from all the different chair shots. But Terry Funk's always there. You see him talking to Mick in the background and backstage, whatever the case is, because like you said, he helped these guys and he built these friendships and relationships, and backstage these guys always stuck together. So that's always a good watch. And I just did a quick search because I was curious now that you mentioned it, because I forgot about his book. If you have Audible, you can check out Terry Funk More Than Just Hardcore, which clocks in at about 10 and a half hours. I don't know if he reads it. Doesn't tell me right here up front, but I'm hoping, I think I'm going to download this over the weekend and give it a listen. Just learn more about Terry that I wish I had done sooner.
I read that about 4 or 5 years ago. I read that, and I read The Last Outlaw, Stan Hansen's book, like one right after the other.
Ooh,
so unfortunately, in my mind, I've kind of conflated a few pieces of a lot of the details of it.
Okay.
So I'm probably due for a reread of it, since I remember enjoying it because it was a good book, and it was just full of just Terry Funk being Terry Funk. He's like the most how can I say, he doesn't, the guy never struck me as having like a giant ego, which in wrestling, that's a very rare thing.
Yeah.
Like he was always kind of self-deprecating. And one of the other stories I always loved hearing is a Chris Jericho story from Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Have you ever heard this story?
No, I don't think so.
So 1994, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, which was Jim Cornette's promotion, where he was doing everything. He was booking it. He was running everything because it was it was everything he wanted to do at a point when he was just completely pissed off and frustrated with wrestling. So he's like, fuck it, I'll go do my own thing. So he was booking whoever he wanted. And at one point he brought in Terry Funk, and I think he had him feuding with Bullet Bob Armstrong, the matriarch of the Armstrong family, Road Dogg's dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so walking around backstage, Chris Jericho, who was there as the Thrill Seekers along with Lance Storm, right before they had a big match coming up with, I think it was the Heavenly Bodies, Chris Jericho, he went to go practice doing moonsaults and stuff like that, and he accidentally fucked it up and broke his arm. So, of course, Jim Cornette's like, hey, idiot, you have a big match coming up. What the fuck is your problem? Fortunately, they managed to work everything around the broken arm. But at one point, Jericho's walking around with his arm busted, and Terry Funk sees him, and he was like, what happened to your arm? And Jericho looks at him and goes, I was being a dumbass. And Terry Funk just looks at him and says, don't feel bad. I'm the king of dumbasses.
Okay.
I love that stuff. This is also the famous time where Terry Funk, out of nowhere in a match with Bullet Bob Armstrong, decided to grab a bunch of metal folding chairs, throw them on top of Bob Armstrong, and then he climbed up to the top turnbuckle, and for the first time in his life, and this was when he was about 45, 46 years old. No, pardon me, he was about 49. He just does a fucking moonsault onto the pile of fucking chairs.
I did not know that.
At which point, Jim Cornette, who was managing him, because Funk was the villain in this, he kind of leans into the ring and he goes, Terry, are you okay? And he goes, I think so. And then he goes, Terry, what the fuck are you doing? And you just hear him say, Corny, I don't know.
For anybody who doesn't know Terry Funk, you have to remember something. Terry has a very soft-spoken voice.
Mm-hmm.
That when he says something, it's almost not a whimper, but almost like a whisper with a squeak.
Yeah, he's got a very weird warble in his voice. It's kind of tough to tell, but he's got a very distinctive voice when he's not yelling, when he's just speaking normally. Yeah.
He's not one to cut angry promos. I mean, I'm sure he's done in the past, but when he speaks, he has a very soft spoken voice. So I can imagine that after he does the moonsault and he's laying there in some type of pain, from the match itself and then the move itself, I can only imagine just that soft spoken voice coming through like, holy shit, what the fuck did I just do? Oh man.
Well, I always kind of figured he was one of those guys in the same spirit as Stan Hansen or Bruiser Brody, where outside of the ring, they're well spoken, they're generally nice guys, but as soon as it's in the environment of it's time to go do the show, that switch gets flipped, and they just become fucking maniacs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
One of the other stories I absolutely love was, have you ever heard of AIW?
Yes.
So, for the sake of our listeners, AIW is Absolutely Intense Wrestling. It runs out of the Cleveland, Ohio area. They've been around, I think, about 15 years now. And some years ago, they were running a show. They brought in Terry Funk they would always mix the shows. It would always be a good mix of like some legends and some newer guys coming in just, doing their thing and just getting their reps in. So they had Terry Funk come in to do pictures and autographs and stuff like that. And he was like one of the attractions to help bring in the crowd. So on the show was Eddie Kingston. At the time he was still doing his thing and just grinding away on the indies. And so apparently from what I gather of this, and I haven't heard the story in a bit, since a friend of mine was actually there working for AIW at the time, originally they were going to have just a quick confrontation between Funk and Kingston, and maybe just like a quick pull apart brawl or something like that, or even just like no, pardon me, I think it was just supposed to be a promo thing back and forth. And of course Funk was like, nah, never mind, we're going to do something different. And they ended up having this brawl where Terry Funk just chased Eddie Kingston around the arena and ended up like destroying like the concession stand. Yeah, and this was like, I think like 20, I think this was within the last 10 years or so. So that's not a young man doing this. That was an older fella. So, but yeah, he was, there's never going to be another one like Terry Funk, man. He was just an all-timer for it. I mean, he worked with everybody. He worked with Race, he worked with Hogan, he worked with the Briscoes, he worked in Japan with, all of those guys. I mean, God, Baba loved him. Like, he was on a handshake deal with All Japan for years. He was a god over there. I mean, for God's sakes, he put out a Vanity album in Japan.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yes, somebody posted up the song yesterday and said there was a song on there called Barbra Streisand's Nose. It's one of the weirdest fucking songs you've ever heard in your fucking life.
We talked about this years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Not the song itself, but the fact that he had put out albums overseas.
Yep.
And since then, it has completely fucking left my mind. And just the thought of it now, I'm gonna have to go look up some Terry Funk albums now.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild thing. Like, they're tough to come by, but yeah, a buddy of mine managed to track down. I can't remember if he has it on CD or vinyl, but he managed to get his hands on it. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's fucking crazy, man. I'm so really gonna miss him. And like you said, seeing him at the end, tail end, and everything else. There was it was Ric Flair was on somebody's podcast, somebody else in the business. Oh no, excuse me, not in the business. It was Ric Flair on John Barenthal's podcast. He has a wide variety of guests, and it was mentioned that back in 2021 that Funk had left the nursing home, had gone home. I don't know what home was at that point in time, but he was doing well from there. But the one thing that was said as far as cause of death, because nothing is very specific right now, it's very fresh, it's very, very new still, but he was dealing with dissociative personality disorder.
Mm.
So unfortunately, he just didn't know where the fuck he was. So, but if anybody out there, again, look up Terry Funk, look up his matches overseas, here in the States, whatever the case is. It's always fun to watch a Terry Funk match because, like you said, he just was insane. There's a lot of guys that I know that when you step in the ring with them or when you watch them step into the squared circle, they have this glimmer in their eyes. And that's when you know that switch that you were talking about. It flips. And it doesn't matter how nice they are, how caring they can be. Once they get into the ring, once they get into that mode, and once they get into that character, that's it. You just lost them for the next 15 to 20 minutes, and they're just whatever they are of that machine going out there and just putting on a show. That was Terry, and he was among some of the very best. So it's unfortunate, and I would love to see what would come after, like from the people who he helped, like Foley, Tommy Dreamer, a lot of the other guys that he worked with. But you have to wait and see.
Yeah.
So fucking R.I.P. Terry Funk. I just saw him have a barroom brawl in Roadhouse in the background. All right. I guess we have to hop on over to the other one. I don't want to make this one a downer of a night, but fuck, I didn't realize that Bray had passed away. And as you were telling me the story a little bit, I was trying to do some background information over here real quick. So I'm like multitasking. Apparently it was a heart attack from what they're saying.
Yeah, that's yeah, a buddy of mine sent me a screen cap from Sean Ross Sapp. Yeah, it was a heart attack that had been brought on by a particularly bad case of COVID.
Yeah. Apparently he had other issues prior to this, but COVID had exacerbated those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And although he was clear a few weeks back to return, and I remember hearing news of him coming back and they were going to rework things, and whether it was going to be the Wyatt family again, they were trying to like settle into a certain storyline or a certain plan of action to get him back. But Bray Wyatt was one of those guys that if it wasn't for the character of Bray Wyatt, who knows where he would have ended up, because he was very vanilla at the time.
Husky Harris wasn't really turning any heads.
That was from the Nexus group, correct?
Yes.
So, yeah, the Nexus group, in of themselves, anybody who was part of that stable, came down with like any number of injuries that like pretty much took them off TV anyway. But yeah, Husky Harris, or as he is known, Windham Rotunda, which obviously for anybody who doesn't follow wrestling, Erwin R. Shyster, that was his father, correct?
That's his father. Yep.
So, I mean, he's a legacy wrestler performer with the WWE at the very least. And when he tried breaking in, it's one of those things where you come onto the scene and you think you have a character, you think you have a name, and you go out there and you might have every wrestling move memorized like the back of your hand. But if you don't have the character, if you don't have the presence, if you don't have the charisma, people are going to forget you really, really quick. It was always a shame to see that when, not Kurt Angle, what's his fucking name? Jesus Christ, I'm blanking on names now. Mr. Perfect, when his son popped up on the scene.
Yeah, I'm blanking on his name as well. I can picture his face. He was
Kurt Hennig. I'm trying to remember. With
Curtis Axel.
Was it?
Curtis Axel.
Thank you. Same thing with him. I was expecting huge things. I was expecting like a big push for him, because Mr. Perfect was a name, was a heel for WWE. And when things didn't, catch on, I'm sure they gave him a couple tries here and there, but it wasn't big, or, whatever producer was working with him at the time, it never really worked out ultimately. So rather than be on camera, he was relegated to a lot of behind the scenes, was a road agent. So he would help train or help produce matches. And I just like, yeah, he's still in the business. Yeah, he's still working, but I always wanted to see the continuation, or the next evolution after Mr. Perfect. I wanted to see his son make it big. Likewise here with Rotunda. Like Husky Harris, like we said, wasn't great. He went away, went back to development for a little while, and then came back with his Bray Wyatt character, and then the Wyatt family was very popular. I'm sure there's a lot of people online, if you go on to watch different intros, when they did the quote unquote the Fireflies, where he'd walk out with a lantern and you'd see everybody turn on their cell phone camera lights, and you just have the arena full of light. It looks like fireflies dancing in the arena. It's just like fucking insane what he was able to pull off from what he used to be to what he evolved into. Mm-hmm. Then the Fiend and everything else, having Tom Savini help him create the mask for his character, and just the weird matches he had. The one WrestleMania match, which made absolutely no fucking sense, but made sense for the character, I guess you can say, where they had like the puppet Vince McMahon with the horns and everything.
Oh, the Firefly Funhouse match at the pandemic WrestleMania. What was that? 36.
Yes. Don't get me wrong, it was fun experimental idea, but at the same time, if you were watching wrestling for the first time, you're like, what the hell am I watching?
Oh yeah, that was a very weird match.
But they let him go with it. He reached heights that were crazy. And then whatever the case was, like, I don't know what happened with the Wyatt family, to be honest. Like, it was hot at one point, then they like got really cold on it, and then they were trying to bring it back at another point. And then the other members had left. It was a weird. Maybe it
Well,
just comes down to contracts.
I don't really know. I can tell you, I just remember for that short period of time, they were running around together for a while. Then they became the Force, and when they brought in Braun Strowman, and they had Luke Harper and Eric Rowan running around with Bray Wyatt for a while. But they kind of just. I'm trying to remember exactly why they. Well, knowing Vince McMahon, he hates stables almost as much as he hates tag teams. So I'm sure he saw Braun Strowman, who's this jacked monster, and he says, "We're going to do something with him, but we got to get him. We got to figure out how to start getting him into the ring so we can get him experience by having him work with all three of these guys." Because then they started spinning him off. Then they had Wyatt kind of run off and do stuff with Matt Hardy when he was doing the broken Matt Hardy gimmick. And then they took Eric Rowan and Luke Harper. Luke Harper, another one, rest in peace, Jesus, taken before his fucking time.
Yeah.
And they had them become the Bludgeon Brothers back in like late 2017 going into 2018. They rode that one for about a year or so before Luke Harper just let his contract lapse and he moved on to AEW. And Eric Rowan just kind of moved on. And after doing some weird stuff with Spiders and Daniel Bryan, and I don't even know what the fuck was going on at that point. Yeah, shit got real weird there for a little while, but I don't know. Once again, it was always the same way that, when they initially brought in the Shield, they had all kinds of, they ran with that for about 2.5 years. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, now we're done with that. Now I have bigger plans for all of you as singles guys, because that's just, I figure if you have a tag team, that's a maximum of one t-shirt you're going to sell. If you have two guys who are established stars on their own, that's at least two t-shirts you could sell.
You know what? That fucking makes sense. And I never thought of it that way.
I heard somebody break it down like that, and I was like, yeah, that one kind of makes sense to me. I don't like it, but I get it.
From a spreadsheet standpoint, that makes more sense. But from a performance standpoint, I think the stable makes more sense, to be honest. But
yeah,
I don't know.
But I mean, you look back at it, Wyatt was solid. He was the first guy in a very long time they actually built that kind of mythology around, especially in an era where everything was more rooted in reality. And here's a guy who's coming out who's got, depending on what point in time, he's got varying mystic powers.
You gotta love when they were like billing him from the bayou, and they were showing all the swamplands and everything else. Did they ever actually do the whole Sister Abigail reveal?
In latter years, this is kind of the area where I dropped off on it, but I knew they were doing some weird stuff involving, I can't remember that one blonde lady who I don't really like. Oh, bloody hell. I can't remember, but, hold on a second.
I know you're talking about. She's the one who was milking the Harley Quinn gimmick for a little bit.
Yeah, her. Yeah, she was kind of doing some wacky stuff with that, but I cannot remember her name for the life of me. So, but yeah, she was doing some weird stuff with him. I think at one point she was supposed to be a doll, and she was Sister Abigail, and I don't know, and then Randy Orton caught on fire, and I don't know, that was a time period where I was like, I kind of don't give a shit about this.
Again, for anybody who's not familiar with it, when you say Randy Orton caught on fire, like, did he spontaneously combust?
I think they had some type of wacky match between the two of them, but it ended with him being immolated.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, man.
All right, I'm gonna read his Wikipedia entry here, just to give everybody who's not familiar with Bray Wyatt, and even though we've covered most of the story here, not familiar with it, just a little bit more background. So, Windham Rotunda, I mentioned before, was an American professional wrestler, was best known for his tenure in the WWE, where he performed under the ring name of Bray Wyatt. Rotunda was a third-generation professional wrestler, following the footsteps of his grandfather, Blackjack Mulligan, his father, Mike Rotunda, IRS, and his two of his uncles, Barry and Kendall Windham.
Mm-hmm.
His younger brother, Taylor Rotunda, is also a professional wrestler, best known as Bo Dallas. Whatever happened to him? Is he still in WWE?
I honestly don't know.
Fuck, I still believe. Sorry. Alongside his brother, he held the FCW Florida Tag Team Championships twice while in WWE, then Developmental Territory Florida Championship Wrestling, where he wrestled under various ring names between 2008 and 2012. He briefly wrestled on WWE's main roster from 2010 to 2011 under the name of Husky Harris, which we mentioned, as member of the Nexus. After returning to WWE's developmental territory, which had been rebranded NXT at that time, Rotunda was repackaged as Bray Wyatt, portrayed as the villainous leader of the Wyatt family. Yep, there it is. A bayou-dwelling cult. He returned to the main roster alongside the Wyatt family members Luke Harper and Eric Rowan. You mentioned that one. Back in 2013, he subsequently became a three-time world champion in WWE, holding the WWE Championship once and the Universal Championship twice. He also held the SmackDown tag titles with Harper and Randy Orton under the Freebird rule. I'm blanking on that one. Wow, okay, I didn't realize. And Raw Tag Team Championship with Matt Hardy once each. After a hiatus from 2018 to April 2019, Wyatt returned with a new gimmick. Portrayed as suffering from a transformative multiple personalities disorder, he randomly switched back and forth between characters. His good side of Bray Wyatt, a Mr. Rogers-esque children's TV host, and his bad side of The Fiend, a grotesque horror-themed monster clown. He was released from WWE in July of 2021, but returned at Extreme Rules in October of 22 with a new character that claimed to be his real-life self, but gradually reincorporated his multiple personalities, in addition to some new ones. His second return would be cut short, as after taking time off beginning in February of 2023, due to contracting COVID-19, he unexpectedly died of a heart attack that August. During his second return, he only had one televised match, which was at Royal Rumble of 2023.
Oh yeah, the Mountain Dew Pitch Black match against LA Knight. I forgot about that.
Oh, was that? Oh shit. Okay. Fuck, I have to go watch
Yeah, I
that
forgot
too.
about that. Go ahead.
No, I have to go back to watch that one. I think I only caught the Rumble of that pay-per-view itself. I didn't get to watch the other matches. Wait, was that the one with
all
the
they did is
neon
go
light
ahead.
ones?
Yeah, it was all black light, and when they came out, Bray Wyatt had a bunch of stuff painted on him, and in the type of that paint that you only see under black light. So
it
it actually
like a
looked
character from Batman and Robin.
not that quite extreme. I think that was like more like neon stuff, but it was pretty. It was a pretty ridiculous match. But apparently there was a ton of extra money to be made because they were like, yeah, we're just going to run this one, and like, oh, Mountain Dew, if you want to sponsor this match, here, give us a pile of cash. So
Okay, I'm vaguely remembering this one now. I think at the very least I caught the highlights from that one, because a lot of the stills were being spread around online after the pay-per-view itself. Okay, look, man, it sucks. Like, here's a guy who still had years ahead of him as far as his career was concerned. How old was he? Fuck, he was 36, man.
yeah, he was a young man. Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
yeah.
I don't care what anybody says. Everybody's like, oh, we're done with the pandemic. Things are getting better. I mean, yes, things have improved drastically as to what they were a few years back. But here, somebody who fucking just got sick off of whatever variant was out there, had underlying health issues, got fucking taken out in what pretty much could be considered the prime of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, man. All right.
Yeah.
That's
4 kids.
no shit, really.
Yeah, 4 kids.
Yeah, you're right. It says it right there. Man, that's a rough one.
In a way, that one's more heartbreaking to me than Terry Funk is very sad. but Terry Funk got to have a long, full life, and he died at 79.
Yeah.
He saw it all. He was on every continent. He'd been every which way. Um, there's something about it that's even more heartbreaking when a guy that young, with a young family, goes. I mean, that just is a kick in the fucking teeth.
It reminds me of fuck, man. I'm sorry. I'm just having a tough time with this one. But with Luke Harper, same thing.
Yeah.
Like for these guys to go out there and entertain people, like you don't know what they're dealing with. You don't know what they're struggling with, and when something like this takes them out, it's just like, what the fuck? Because you see them, they'll take chair shots to the head, they'll get flung out the ring or off of whatever catwalk or stage or trestle that they have. They fling their bodies to the floor, fling their bodies to the mat, flying off the top rope. Punishment after punishment after punishment, and then real world problems, kick into place. I don't know exactly what was going on with his heart issues. He's a bigger guy, so I would imagine, blood pressure and all the other stuff that they tell you to watch out for as you're growing older. You would assume that some of these guys are in better shape, being in shape and ring shape are two different things.
Yeah.
Being able to run those ropes, being able to do those moves in quick succession, like you have to have a certain gas tank to do those. It's like when people watch MMA or UFC and like, oh, this match is going so slow. Yeah, but to be able to throw punches and kicks and everything else and try to defend at the same time taxes one's body very, very quickly. And if you're not conditioned to a certain extent, you're not going to last very long in those rounds. Much like in world of professional wrestling. Again, I mentioned before that it's all scripted, it's all make pretend, whatever the case is. But you're still going out there and putting on athletic feats for the crowd's entertainment. So if you don't have that conditioning, you can get fucked up real fast. I've seen guys when they first start out run the ropes, and after running the ropes for like not even like 2 minutes, they end up like throwing up whatever water they drank that day. It's not easy on the body whatsoever. But to hear that underlying health issue and then a fucking virus fucking kills him, it's fucking sad. And I'm sure he had other like plans and ideas and things going on, and for as much as, like I said, the Wyatt family was hot and cold at certain times. Because I remember at one point when they were feuding with Daniel Bryan, that was the big thing. Like, oh, either the Wyatt family is just going to continually beat him down, and he's always going to find a way to get the upper hand. And then at one point during the holidays, Daniel Bryan ended up joining the Wyatt family for like a few weeks. And like, what the fuck's going on here? And then they quickly undid that one because of the way the fans reacted, I guess. I don't know. But, man, it's fucking heartbreaking. For anybody who's wondering in the background, if you could hear it, there's firework display going off from the nearby baseball stadium. So it's not snap, crackle, pop. It's probably a victory for the local baseball team. But, wow. Okay. I was not expecting, I was expecting to talk about Terry Funk because he's, long life, beloved, big career, but Bray Wyatt, man, that one caught me completely off guard.
Yeah, it's really sad when you think about it too, that now of the four guys who were in the Wyatt family, two of them are now gone. Luke Harper passed away in December of 2020 from, I can't remember what lung affliction it was, but it started in October and it just got progressively worse until he passed away. And and that was another sad one because he was another one. He left behind two young children. And he was a young guy too. He was, at that point, I think he had celebrated his 40th birthday in the hospital.
Let's see. Yeah, he passed away he was 41 years.
41? Okay.
Yeah. And does it say what he passed from?
Yeah, it was some type of a lung issue, but it was not COVID related. It was within that first year of the pandemic. I remember that much because it was late 2020.
Yeah, it actually says right here, despite what some fans believe at the time, the issue was unrelated to COVID-19. as Huber had been tested negative multiple times. He had been moved to the intensive care unit in late October. Yeah, it just says a lung issue. Amanda revealed that Huber had died from, here we go, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis.
That's it.
A
Okay.
rare condition which causes lung tissue to become irreversibly thickened until the lungs can no longer function. Oh, fuck.
Yep.
All right, this is the fucking Downer cast. Welcome to the show. My name is Eric Hernandez.
We haven't done a death cast since the olden days.
And this is exactly why I've been like trying to avoid like celebrity deaths or certain things. I mean, we made the exception for Pee Wee Herman, or at least I did, when his recent passing. But shit, man, like this. Again, the difference is living a long life and having longevity in your career. And granted, Bray Wyatt was around for quite some time, but to go at that age and to go that way, it's just like, fuck, man. Like, things could be different. And you would think, especially with like the doctors for WWE, they would be on top of certain things, but I guess, you know, they can't relegate what people do day to day. So even though I know we've talked about in the past how the old school of wrestlers would, you know, get drunk and party and do drugs, whatever the case was, and just get into like loads of trouble and pull horrible pranks on one another. Nowadays, like the newer school is like hanging out in hotel lobbies in Japan and like seeing how many Oreos and you can eat or how much milk you can drink at the same time, whatever the case is.
Yeah, or playing video games.
Oh, yeah, or playing video games and making YouTube channels. It's much different. Or you've got Zack Ryder collecting action figures, wrestling figures, and, you know, increasing his collection, whatever the case is. But it's so night and day. But you would think that some of these guys would be better off. I was just watching Xavier Woods Up Down Down. He was putting up a few videos recently, and they were talking how about Big E Langston, how you know, he had won this championship, he was finally on, you know, riding on top, had that horrible injury to his neck, and now they're saying that it's possible he might not ever wrestle again after his injury. He's recovered for the most part, like he can try to get back to a regular life, but he may never be cleared to wrestle for quite some time, if ever. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because we've got guys like Daniel Bryan and Edge who have returned after career-threatening injuries. But again, that's life on the road, wrestling every other night, that kind of thing. And once you get your body to a certain point, hopefully he can make a comeback. I mean, he still looks big, he still works out, but in reference to Big E, didn't Edge just supposedly have his last match?
I don't know because I barely pay attention to WWE anymore unless it's something I just pick up along the cross chatter on the internets, because the vast majority of the stuff they put out has little to no interest to me in this day and age. But I mean, he's been running pretty well. I mean, you know, he retired 2011, came back 2020 right before the pandemic. Yeah, and he's been working ever since then. And I mean, I was never the biggest Edge fan, so I also never really paid a ton of attention to him anyway. So, I mean, like, once they broke up Edge and Christian and they stopped being hilarious, then I was like, yeah, I'm cool. But, yeah, I think he might, I hope he's getting ready to wrap it up. He's got to be in his early 50s by now. But, you know, Christian is going strong on the other side on AEW, so go figure.
Yeah, I think I saw it was Edge and Sheamus had some match, and they were saying, oh, that's what it was. Okay, so it's not his final match, so to speak, but it's his quote was, this is his last match under his current contract.
Okay.
So I guess his contract's going to run out. I know he's going to be in an upcoming Disney movie. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, whatever the case is. He plays Ares in that story, so he's going to be walking around with a leather jacket and a sword. You know, harkens back to his days when he was in the one Highlander movie. Ah, you seem to have lost your edge. That horrible
Highlander Ed game.
Yeah. See, you knew it. But no, I mean, these guys, once they go out, like, especially another good example is Shawn Michaels. For the longest time had those back issues, and people are saying, "Oh, he's done. His career is over with. He's gonna retire. He's never gonna have another wrestling match." Then I remember hearing stories about him at a school in Texas. I think it might have been his school, where he was training the likes of like AJ Styles and other guys that were coming up at the time. And I heard stories about him like, "Oh, he finally got back in the ring and he's fucking doing moonsaults off the top rope." And
Yeah, the Texas Wrestling Academy.
yeah, and he's supposed to be retired. He's supposed to be unable to wrestle, but not living life on the road does wonders for the body.
Yeah, his back injury healed up and he kicked his pill addiction. So, yeah, those things tend to help.
Yeah, so all right, so we might see Edge at the very least again. Who knows? If you want to, I missed the Brood days with Gangrel and Christian, but
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I liked Edge when he first came out, and I know I got some shit like a long time ago because at one point I was like, I was excited for Edge, but then I think that whole storyline between him and Matt Hardy really just soured me on him. To which
I'll do it.
I was like, oh, whatever. Like, okay, he was at one point like a big star, but I was like, all right, I don't really see him as main event material anymore, and I am not a good judge of character when it comes to wrestling. My ideas usually don't go that far. I should never book a show. Trust me, I've tried. I just don't have the mind for the business. So, but Edge has obviously gone on to have a long, prosperous career. I'm jealous as fuck because he's married to Beth Phoenix. So he's made it. He's had his fun. He's had wrestling. He's also had acting. So he probably did the same thing as far as the Screen Actors Guild for the health insurance. I think he's good. So hopefully he continues to have his fun in and out of the ring. We'll see what happens. But okay, I don't know what else to add to this, man. How about you?
I think we've I think we've successfully bummed everyone out,
I think
including ourselves.
Oh, here's a quick one. Maybe we can like just do a quick wrap up on this one. Have you seen? I don't know if it's online or not. I heard there's footage released of the new Toxic Avenger movie coming out. Have you heard about this?
I knew they were doing a new one, but I haven't seen any footage.
Okay, I saw the poster for it. The poster looks intriguing. It doesn't reveal much. It's like a little artsy piece, and I heard that Peter Dinklage is attached to the film.
Yes.
So I don't know how that one's going to turn out, but okay, we'll have to do some more research on that one, and hopefully next week we'll tackle that, or as it comes along. But all right, well, if you haven't turned off the show in depression and sadness at this point, I still implore anybody to go out and watch any Terry Funk matches. Beyond the Mat, it's always fun. Fuck, go watch Roadhouse just to watch Terry Funk in the background, be a bouncer and get his ass kicked by Patrick Swayze. That's always fun. What else has he been in? I'm trying to think off the top of it. You said Over the Top.
Over the Top, Paradise Alley, couple of TV shows, like you said, Quantum Leap. I'm blanking on the other stuff, but he's been around.
I'm working on it. Give me 1 second here. We're gonna send this off on a higher note. God damn it. All right. If you want to look them up in film, Paradise Alley, Over the Top, Time Stalkers, Roadhouse, Mom, Can I Keep Her? That sounds weird. That was from 98. Active Stealth in 99. Beyond the Mat, also 99. Friday Night Lights. He was one of the fans, apparently. Uncredited. Did not know that. And if this is the one that I'm thinking it is, 2005, The Ringer. Was that the Johnny Knoxville movie?
I think so, where, yeah, he pretends to have a developmental disability so he can go into the Special Olympics.
Yes.
Okay.
I did not know Terry Funk was part of that one. Okay. TV show. 85, Wild Side. 91, Swamp Thing. Look at that.
Huh.
His character was J.J. Dax in the episode The Prometheus Parabola. 91, Quantum Leap, the one I mentioned, Heart of a Champion. Great freaking episode, but then again, I'm also a big fan of Quantum Leap. If you ever get a chance, there's another episode called Glitter Rock, that same season, where he essentially jumps into the lead singer of what is essentially a riff on Kiss. So immediately I was sold on it. Tequila and Bonetti? I don't remember that one, 92. The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. Obviously, Thunder in Paradise. Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction. He was Dirk Simmons in the episode The Wrestler. Sounds appropriate. And then Dark Side of the Ring. Blood and Wire, Onita's FMW. Which...
Oh, yeah, from about 2 years ago when they did that one. Good episode. Yeah.
I have to watch that one still, but okay. Well, so there you go. So now you have some material, and then of course there's also the book of Terry Funk, More Than Just Hardcore. So you have a bunch of information and resources if you want to look up who Terry Funk was, what he did, how he contributed, and why he's so beloved in the world of professional wrestling. There we go. Sound good?
Yeah.
And obviously our condolences to not only Terry Funk's family, but also to the Rotunda family for the loss of Bray Wyatt. Which, again, way too fucking soon. But if you made it this far, thank you for listening. My name is Eric Hernandez, along with
Doug.
We are the Rabblecast.